Looking
Well,
forward to this for a while. How's life?
life is good. A lot is happening. Everything's hectic, standard, but it's okay.
It's standard with a big team, but you push on and you're like the most resilient team I've ever come across.
Is that a good thing? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Oh, we're going to assume it is because that's the way you build a startup.
True, 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 true.
Can I get some context on you for this stream? We know what Big does, but I hear you're going through a pivot, and I'm assuming we're going to talk about some of that today.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Happy to speak about that. So I'm Aaron. I'm the CTO of Bigt. Previously, I worked on Chopty, which is an AI video editing startup. Um, and yeah, Bigt is essentially in the ad tech space. In terms of pivot and direction, that's still TBD, but essentially we help personalize and optimize advertisements. Currently focused on LinkedIn. We'll see.
I love it. Look, we've had Zara on the show, we've had Luke on the show. I'd love to
Yeah,
talk a little bit about like what your kind of technical background. How did you come to be what Zara describes as one of the best engineers in Europe?
that's sweet. We're married, so Zara has to say that. Um, I've been I've been coding since I was about 12 years old. So I'm 24 now. So about half of my life has been spent doing a lot of coding. That started off with video games, which I think is a really interesting space because it kind of I mean, video games are quite simulation-y, and so you learn a lot about like physics and stuff like that. And I think yeah, so that was really interesting to me from early on. From then, I did a lot of like web development, web design, and graphic design, and video editing and stuff like that. And so a lot of my focus, I think it comes from like video games as well, but I think I've always enjoyed making things that look nice. And so that's why a lot of the companies that we built have been very focused on visual things like creative tooling and stuff like that. So I think I'm a good full stack engineer, a good full stack developer, which means I do like front end and back end and all sorts of stuff. But I'm also not particularly specialized in any one area.
I love the gaming aspect. Not often do you get to talk to people that have built games. You know, what are some of your inspirations from that time of building games, and what are some of the games that you built?
Oh, what are some of the games? So I've built a bunch. I've built like racing games. I built a lot of like quite weird ones actually for a piece of coursework. I did like some psychedelic kitten tree something game. It was very trippy. It was very weird. It was very fun. But I really like. I think my early inspiration comes from stuff like Portal. Portal, it's like a it's like what's called like non-Euclidean geometry, which is like if you have so the world that we live in has Euclidean geometry, and non-Euclidean means that you break those rules. So like the TARDIS is an example of that. Like it's a small box, you go inside the TARDIS, and then it's massive inside. That's non-Euclidean geometry. So I love stuff like that. I love stuff related to anything where complex behaviors arise out of simple rules. I love that as well. So yeah, complex systems. Yeah, that's my answer.
Why? Like, why the complex systems? How are you able to simplify them in your head and then build that into something that people are going to play?
It's actually the opposite. It's that you have simple rules and then complex behaviors arise
Right.
out of it, that direction. And so, there are many games which are like that when it comes to like synergies, like, you have an ability and then you mix it with another ability, and those two things together result in like this special ability. And I think what's really interesting about them is that as a result, you have like if you've only got 10 abilities, the actual possible number of combinations and permutations becomes massive. And so it results in a lot of interesting outcomes that sometimes the developers don't even expect to be the case to begin with. So I
Do
think
you
it's also like fun for the developer to create games like that because otherwise game dev can be very like it's a slog. It can be a big slog.
do you feel like you were born too early? It's like now you have this beautiful technology in AI that can sort of supercharge gaming and like building games, and you have AI avatars inside of games or AI NPCs that can add to these complex behaviors that can happen inside of a game.
Yeah, potentially. It's a good question. Um, I don't know. It's interesting because for me, for example, the types of games that I personally like it's not so like narrative driven. Like it's not
Hmm.
so much to do with like NPCs and narrative. It's more to do with like they're very beautiful and kind of like art piece types of games. Like those are the types of games that I personally really like, which I think are more focused. Like they tend to be like more psychological, like I say, a bit trippy, a bit weird. And I think that that comes a lot from human experiences sometimes, if that makes sense.
What are you playing these days then?
Oh, I don't have time.
You're shipping too much.
Unfortunately, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Unfortunately,
I want to
I,
dive into the paper that you published, you wrote back at uni.
yeah,
I believe it was.
yeah,
It was on conditional generative modeling of graphic design layouts and their contents. Can you give us a
yeah.
little bit of an abstract about how that came to be?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that came about because we were working on a graphic design app like a couple years ago. And so, it was like the kind of golden goose that would be interesting to achieve, which is essentially like the title. It's a bit of a jargony title, as papers often are. But essentially what it means is how do I take elements and then put them on a canvas to form a cohesive graphic design? So that would mean like I have a title, I have a button, I have an image, background color or whatever, and then make that into a graphic design. So that's what that was about. And the concept of that was that if we could achieve that, then perhaps that would be a better workflow or a different workflow to what companies like Canva are doing. Because Canva, it's very much so like template first. I have my template and then I fill in my information into the template. Maybe I delete some stuff, maybe you have to move stuff around if it doesn't fit. And this way around, the hypothesis is that you already know what you want to be in your design. You know the information that you want to communicate. Now it's just a problem of okay, how do we do that aesthetically? And so it saved the process of having to look through templates, and instead you would start content first.
Understood. I'd love to ask, why did you choose GANs over other generative approaches like VAEs or newer diffusion models at the time?
Yeah, so at the time, diffusion models weren't really like a thing so much. So this was a couple years ago now.
And so stable
Um,
diffusion was kind of coming into existence.
Not even, not yet for a little while, or at least not into kind of like it probably existed. Probably some of the research was there, but not into kind of like wider knowledge and exposure. And so that was one of the main reasons for GANs. GANs, I think, are just very interesting. This adversarial nature is very interesting, and at the time, that was the state of the art to use. And so one of the things which is interesting is that that version of GAN is actually like I mean, it was a precursor to Stable Diffusion. But transformers didn't exist at the time. So transformers are, part of the architecture that's used to make LLMs and all this stuff to exist. Actually, interestingly, since then, I've read some of the papers, and the same problem that I was solving, they are now using transformers for, because transformers are inherently very good at knowing. Like originally, it was developed for translation, right? Like Google
Hmm.
developed it for translation from one language to another, and the reason why is because they have attention, which means a word can like look at other words and know what it means relative to others. And the same thing applies to graphic designs, right? Like I don't know where to put a title unless I know where the image is. So it's the same sort of idea. So people are now applying transformer technology and more modern technology to these spaces, which is probably the approach I would take now as well.
Is the paper out of date now from university?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, massively out of date.
But
These
did it form the starting or the kind of the building blocks of what you went on to do at Big or Choppity as an example?
I think it would be a direction that we could take it in, but it would require significant research. Like graphic design layout generation is a very, very, very difficult problem. It's a super difficult problem for
Is it a
many
problem worth
reasons.
solving?
That's also another interesting question. The reason that we saw value in solving it was for specifically ad creative variations. So, for
Hmm.
example, when you run ads on Meta, um, it's valuable to have different variations of the ad in order to A/B test them and see which one performs better.
Hmm.
If you do that manually, it means that you're limited by manual capacity. So you might only do a couple different variations, each of which is genuinely quite time consuming to make. Whereas if you could do it programmatically, then you can make as many of them as you want, and you could figure out the optimal version of that. And you can essentially run that optimization algorithmically, as opposed to having to manually do it. And so the question of whether or not it's worth it, one of the hypotheses is that, some of the brands and companies that we speak to spend $1 million a month on ads. They have they aim to have like a 3x return on ad spend, right? So I spend 1 million, I make 3 million in revenue. If you can achieve incremental minor gains, like if you can make that like a percent better, actually the revenue impact is really large. And so as a result, from actually an optimization perspective, there's a lot of revenue that can be generated from this kind of a process. On like the creator side, like doing it as like a prosumer tool or a consumer tool like Canva, maybe not, probably not that valuable, but actually on this side, it's quite interesting.
So from a programmatic point of view, it makes a lot of sense because we can generate more ads and we can win that 1 or 2% on these very large budgets that we're deploying.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
And
right.
that was bigged in its previous form, as I understand it, right?
Kind of. It's a direction that we were looking at going, but it's something that requires a lot of R&D to pull off. The question that you would inherently ask is, especially across the last 2-3 years, we've seen Canva roll out a lot of AI features.
Mm-hmm.
Why have they not rolled this out? Maybe it's because it's not important, but also maybe because it's just very difficult to achieve. And that cost benefit ratio just isn't there.
When we talk about R&D, what are we thinking about here, all the research? What are we thinking about here? Is it like I have to go and quite literally figure out how this all works and then pull together the technology? Or is it I just haven't found a way to code this yet?
Oh no, it's like it's an invention. It's like an inventor. It's like how do you make this thing work given what currently exists and what currently doesn't exist, but hypothetically you could invent, right? So it's like it's quite difficult. And the other thing as well is that things which may work hypothetically, you don't necessarily know if they work until you can actually test them. But sometimes testing them requires a lot of time, effort, and budget. And so that's the R&D process. It's the thinking of something, setting up a test that makes sense, and you have a high confidence of it succeeding and receiving some improvement in knowledge and information about it, running that test, and then it probably fails, and then you loop a bunch of times until you figure out something that does work.
You're an incredibly high agency team over there. And so this pivot must be, when I say easy, I don't mean it in the traditional sense, but it's we understand what we're doing here. Like we all know how to pivot as an example. Why the pivot?
Hmm. Why the pivot? I think so. What we were speaking to lots of really interesting companies on the direct to consumer side of things, and really, so from our last company, at the last company, the average revenue per user, so the amount that the average customer pays each month was $20.
Mhm.
$20 is a really tough average revenue to scale
Yep.
because it's not large enough that you can really offer a lot of like one-to-one support. But also, if you're bootstrapped, it means that you need to have a lot of users in order to really make it make any sense. And so as a result, for this company, we definitely want to be at the enterprise price point, because that's something we know that we can scale and we can make sure that we have really good like customer support and everything from day one. And what we kind of noticed is that when we were speaking to these larger companies, the problem that they had wasn't actually a problem that we wanted to solve or that we thought was really scalable to solve or worth solving. And so as a result, we were like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. And then at the same time, we had actually signed a pilot for this space. And so we're like, okay, well, we're already actually generating revenue for this. This makes more sense as well from a product perspective. There's things to be figured out, but it's always a case of like, yes, so we got to revenue quite quickly on that side of things, but there's not much value in getting to revenue quickly unless you see a future kind of path. We're not trying to make a company which generates 1 million a year. It's trying to be 100 million a year, right? So how do we make sure that we're going down the correct path for that? And I think we just couldn't quite see that on that side of things.
And so pivoting to LinkedIn was a strategic choice because it's what the market wants and it's a problem that you want to solve. Is it within the same context of creative assets?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, so it's in the personalization, optimization side of things. There's potentially an element of workflow here as well, but interestingly, we might be on the image side of things, but then also on text ads, which is it's strange because we went from video, which is like very high dimension, down to images, and now we're like, oh, text is actually quite interesting.
Why
So
is
yeah.
text interesting?
text is interesting because the higher up you go in that dimensionality, the more complicated things get. So it works as a really good kind of like a testing bed, right? Like if you can make it work with text, you've got a higher probability of making it work with images. It's the same with like AI gen stuff, right? Like ChatGPT is pretty good. Like people, obviously people still complain about it, but it's pretty decent. Image generation, more people complain about, and then video generation, even more people complain about because it just gets harder and harder to solve at each level. And for us, we're not focused on the generative necessarily in that same way. However, the same applies, which is that there's just more information within one single asset if it's a video versus an image versus text.
You must deeply understand the models that are being released into the public. And when I say deeply, from a use case perspective, right? Whether that's a Claude 4.1, whether that's an OpenAI, a GPT-5, whether that's a Grok. Have you got a flavor of the month?
To be honest with you, I'm actually going to say no, that I don't have that good of a grasp of these things. It's interesting because I think that
In what sense?
well, in general, the way that I approach problem solving, like I get this is going to sound like a tangent, but I get a
We love
lot
a
of
good
people coming
tangent,
to me.
please.
They ask me, Aaron, I want to start coding. How do I learn to code?
Uh-huh.
And always my answer to that is just pick a problem and solve it. I think it's I think it's valuable to learn like the fundamentals of like coding and stuff like that, sure. But I have met many people who are like, okay, I'm gonna learn JavaScript, then I'm gonna learn, Python, then I'm gonna learn C, then and then I will be a great coder because I know all these languages. I actually don't think that's a good way to go about doing things, because then you kind of learn a lot of stuff, but not actually how to do anything specific. And I see it the same way when it comes to these kind of like AI solutions. I think it's really valuable at the level that I'm at now, where I'm trying to implement solutions to problems. It's useful to have a wide understanding of all of the different techniques that exist because that serves in problem solving. But then the more granular things realistically don't have a massive impact. Like there are many more gains to be made elsewhere than like, okay, should I use this version of an LLM or that version of an LLM? Unless your product is exclusively an LLM like wrapper or something. Like if I'm building like a coding assistant, then yeah, it's very important for me to know whether I'm using that model or that other model. But otherwise, like a lot of the value from products often comes from other areas or bringing together these different technologies.
I want to touch on something. You said that like just go and solve a problem, go and solve a like go and hack together a project, right? And that's the best way to learn. I completely agree. Do you think tools like Lovable, Bolt, Replit, Base 44 that are sort of allowing you to just build websites without any front end experience and just allow it to build it for you? In some cases with MCP, if we get the vision for the future that we want out of it, it will just be able to bolt into a Canva and create assets, bolt into an Ocean and create an API. Oh, sorry, allow you to build the relevant pages there, or have more complex APIs into like Google Trends as an example. Do you think that's useful for young coders today or like people that are getting into software engineering?
Um, I think I don't know. I feel like there's probably going to be a pre LLM generation of coders and a post LLM generation of coders, which are slightly different in their ways of thinking. I think that tools like Lovable, I would look at them more like a really advanced version of like Wix or like some website builder, as opposed to necessarily coding. Because by the original definition of the term vibe coding, coined by Andrew Carpathy, it's about coding without actually ever looking at the code. So I wouldn't really call that somebody who is coding. I would call that somebody who is building a product, which I think is super valuable, but it's not necessarily learning how to code. If, however, you are looking at the code, then that's different. So I actually think that there's probably a sweet spot of people who are growing up now, who or learning how to code now, who are actually coding. So they're using some software like VS Code or some kind of editor to write code, but they're using LLMs to help solve problems faster. Like that's what I use now, and it makes my life a lot easier and a lot faster. But I would class that still as coding, whereas using something like Lovable is a bit more. Um, Like, yeah, using something like Wix.
We had Josh on the show last week, to switch gears slightly. And they were talking about Plugged obviously going out of business, or having to be shut down at the end of this 100 days if they don't get their full 100 members as part of the Plug community.
Mm.
You were one of the early members there, weren't you? Why was
Yep.
Plugged the right space for you?
Plugged was the right space because previously I was in a co-working space which had nobody in it,
Oh,
and
so
it
it's
was a very
just you, just shipping.
yeah, no, it was myself, Zara, and a freelance like real estate agent, lawyer, something like this. I don't know. In this space, and she was really lovely. However, what it meant that most working culture is, at least in the UK, with a hybrid remote culture, is that people are in office Tuesday to Thursday and they leave at about 4 or 5 p.m., which is not equivalent to how we do work. And so very often I would find myself working at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and it's just completely deserted everywhere. I know the cleaners very well. The cleaners know me, but that was about it from way of like social interaction and people that I felt like I was working together with. In comparison, here at Plugged, if I leave at 10 p.m., I'm sometimes not the last person to leave, which is really nice. And yeah, I was like super close to setting up my own kind of like community of founders because of that kind of like I feel like it's kind of a loneliness situation, but loneliness isn't quite the right word. It's a bit like I don't know. It's just like this solo grind, and it's just nicer to do it with other people. Yeah.
Keeps you moving forward when you can see other people in the same space as you, grinding the same way. I think there's obviously an effective use of time, right? You don't always have to sit there for a 24-hour day and just graft and graft and graft. But there's always someone else doing it if you're not doing it. I think that the FOMO sort of kicks in. If you're around other people, it's great. And you can bring that energy and they can give you that energy if you can feed off of that. Do you think the UK has a problem with that, or Europe has a problem with that at the moment, where we aren't keeping up with the Valley or China in that perspective, in that we don't work as hard? We will clock off at 4 if we want to, and then we won't continue to work.
Yeah, but then immediately we get into kind of more political conversations about whether or not a 996 is a good working environment.
Is a 996 a good working environment?
I think from a capitalist perspective, yes. From a quality of life perspective, probably not. Is what I would
Unless
say. It's like,
unless you want that quality of life.
yeah, yeah, sure, and that's fine, and I think as founders, that's the sacrifice that you make, right? Like you're making a sacrifice on the quality of life, potentially, depending on your definition of quality life, for the like future reward. But actually, interestingly, do you know TSMC,
I do.
the yeah, so TSMC, the semiconductor company.
Manufacturers.
So they opened up a foundry in Arizona. And I think this year it went operational or something like that. So previously, so they have it in Taiwan and everything goes through there. Now it's in Arizona, and they were saying that actually one of the major issues that they have is that they couldn't find people in Arizona who work as hard as people in Taiwan. And so there's very different like working cultures across borders. And yeah, but I don't know whether or not any is necessarily objectively better than the other.
Which is better for you?
I think in the current stage of my life right now, it's definitely work focused. Yeah,
I
but
love
that
it.
that won't be the case in X number of years time.
I absolutely love it. I love the work that you're doing over at Bigged, and I'm looking forward to what ends up being the outcome of the pivot. Before we let you go, Zara was on the show and we asked her, what did she love about working with you? And what did she hate about working with you? I've got to ask the same question.
I I didn't actually have a look at what Zara said, so I'm curious now. I'm gonna say one of the things that I love working with Zara is that we're very much so on the same page with things. I think we have a very natural rhythm, in the sense that we both know when we're like at the same, because it fluctuates between people. Like sometimes somebody is like tired and doesn't want to talk about work right now and stuff like that. And I think we pick up on a lot of these unconscious kind of like signals from each other to get each other's vibe quite easily. So I like that that's very like seamless and there's we don't have issues. And we're very good at like agreeing and coming to terms with things together. And then what I don't like, oh, I don't know. I'm thinking now. I feel on the spot now. What do I don't like?
That's why we do this live. It creates a sense of urgency.
Um, I don't know. I'm gonna say maybe that we. I guess the fact that because we work together, we don't have what some other couples might have, where it's like, oh, Kathy did this today. I can't believe she did that. Or James from HR was really annoying me. Or like, these kind of like this work life updates that I guess other people have because we live the same work life, right? So maybe that I would say that.
I can't remember exactly what she said. I'm gonna have to go back, check the archives, the back catalog, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Sure. Sounds good.
Aaron, I'm gonna let you get back to shipping and pivoting like no one's business. Keep
Yeah.
up the great work. We're looking forward to seeing the outcome of the pivot. We'll speak to you guys soon. Thanks so much for the time.
Okay, thanks. Okay, bye. Bye.